So I'm Roxy Murray. I go as the multiple sclerosis fashionista on Instagram.
I'm just there to hold the flag for the disabled people.
You know, I just thought I was invincible.
Disabled people are we're problem solvers.
Roll into 18, I woke up with double vision. In all fairness, I thought I took too much MDMA.
Those Lucy and Yak trousers were a statement.
Probably should be a knife thrower because I'd be great at it.
Oh, but you're young and you're disabled. And it's like, yeah, but that still means I'm fucking disabled. Oh, disabled people have kids. What? Really?
Passed out in the middle of the street and had a spasm on the floor and wet myself.
Today's guest, Roxy Murray, is a disability advocate, queer advocate, and content creator. I've actually had the pleasure of sharing a catwalk with Roxy. She's such a great person, and it was a great conversation to have today, particularly surrounding some of the changes we're seeing when it comes to disability and fashion, but where we see the industry needs to change and what needs to be better. I really do hope you enjoy this episode, so please sit back, relax, and enjoy. Welcome to the Not Quite Podcast. I'm Charlie Randall. Let's get ready to rewrite the rulebook. Welcome back to the Not Quite Podcast. Today we've got Roxy with us. Roxy, did you want to quickly introduce yourself, let everyone know who you are and what you do, and a bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Roxy Murray. I go as the multiple sclerosis fashionista on Instagram. I am a disability rights and queer advocate that uses fashion as a tool to be visible, so people have to listen to what I say.
Love it. And also, like, some of your Instagrams are, they're so good. And I'm always so jealous because I'm like, my quality's nowhere near that. Damn it.
No, your quality's great.
I try my best. It's all Gino. Like, I take all the credit, but it's all Gino.
Yeah, she is magic,
Yeah.
though, I will say.
It's basically, she's like the brains behind the operation. I'm just there to hold the flag for the disabled people. So what was tell us a bit more about you, like what was growing up like for you, tell us your story sort of this far, really.
So growing up in general was like, life as everyone has, being a teenager, slightly moody teenager, very emo, very scene kid like, and that was all right. We had the usual teenage angst moments where like I wanted to sit in Camden as a punk by the river and tell everyone, like give them all up yours, whatever.
Yeah.
And obviously home life was okay. And I just thought I was invincible. I then went to university to study fashion because obviously I've always loved art and fashion.
Yeah.
It's one subject in my life that I've actually ever cared about. Like everything else I kind of sucked at. Like I just couldn't get into it. So I've been doing it like consistently since the age of 11 in some capacity or another. And while at uni, I just like, like when you go partying and stuff and you like have like this really intense life, I start to feel like, oh, I can't get out of bed. Oh, like I'm just over, like I can't do things, or I felt extra tired, or like was extra miserable. And I didn't know why I felt so fatigued and over things, and I just couldn't get to like university and stuff with ease. Obviously I was partying quite a bit, so I just thought that's what it was. And then roll into 18, I woke up with double vision and I couldn't see, basically.
Wow. Okay. That's quite a big thing to face when you're just 18. That must have been a proper like mental, like I use it quite a lot. It must have been quite a head fuck to be like, whoa, okay, this is what's happening now, and I need to learn and adapt to it. Like, what was going?
In all fairness, I thought I took too much MDMA. Like I was like, oh yeah, like I've taken too much E over the last couple of months, and actually this is just karma.
Yeah.
But it was horrible, in all honesty, to wake up and like have blindness in one eye and double vision in the other, and you're like, no one was in my house for one, so that was even worse because my mum's usually always there.
Yeah.
And for the first time, like she's decided I'm just gonna go out shopping and do my thing, and I'm like, oh great. I woke up and I was like, like, have you ever felt like you're like tripping where you're like, am I still dreaming?
Yep. Been there.
That's how I felt like, am I still dreaming? Obviously wasn't. And there was no one to really like scream and be like, hi guys, I can't see. And also like, I'm like, I don't know what to do. I kind of can see out the side, can't see out that one. I'm just like, I kind of freaked out a little bit, in fairness, as you
I
get
can
further.
imagine. Like, I would have done the same. Like, obviously, add me into the equation. Like, if that happened to me now in my current situation, I would have literally just been fucked. That would have been it. That would have been it. I was just stuck. That, like, because, like, I think a lot of people take it so much for granted of like, oh, I'm just going to be able to get up and do this thing and it's not going to be a problem. So when you get blindsided by something like that, it's like, whoa, how the fuck does this all work now? Like, yeah, like I say all the time, disabled people are weird problem solvers. Like when you're disabled, you're constantly like, oh, I can fix this. But then as an average Joe coming into that, you're like, what the fuck? Like, how does this all work?
We're innovators just by trade.
Yeah.
Like, we have to adapt all the time. But when you don't know that you're about to enter the realm of like disability, and you are basically, for me, like I said, I love art and fashion. So my eyes were like everything to
Yeah.
me as well. Like, I love visuals. And I think I just went into space of going, oh my God, like I will not be able to see. Because when I went and I was rushed to the eye hospital, it wasn't like, oh hi, you got MS at all. It was like, oh hi, like your optic nerves are doing some things and we think you might have a brain tumor. So I'm like, oh great.
Yeah.
Like, what do I do now? um Obviously I was also by myself in that space. Like, I was in the room by
Yeah.
myself, so I'm just sitting there 18. So I'm like, you got a brain tumor? I'm like, oh great. Like, I thought I was gonna like go and like, I don't know, get wasted
Yeah.
around the world,
Yeah.
not have a brain tumor. And then they was like, we need to send you to like the main hospital, because obviously it's the eye hospital.
Yeah.
And then it was a few weeks where they did testing and stuff. For me, I was misdiagnosed. So I was originally diagnosed with lupus and something called antiphospholipid syndrome
Mm.
and benign intracranial hypertension. In layman's terms, benign intracranial hypertension is too much spinal fluid in your spine that raises into your brain and causes like cranial pressure. So I would deal with like really intense headaches.
Yeah.
Antiphospholipid syndrome was like a blood clot issue. And then lupus is very similar to MS, but I don't quote me on it. It doesn't present with lesions that I know of, because at that point no one saw any lesions on my spine or my brain. So no one thought MS. They just was like, you're brown, you're presenting these things. This is what we think you have. Also, you're overweight. Go on a diet. See you later.
That's like people's solution for everything, isn't it? Just go on a diet, lose some weight, you'll be fine. Meanwhile, you're like,
Yeah,
it's definitely not just that.
definitely.
It's mad.
It wasn't just that.
So tell us a bit more about your disability slash condition, and for those that don't know, like do a sort of deep dive into it. I always like to hear it from different people's perspectives, because so many people describe things differently.
Yeah. So now, okay, so fast forward a few years, I got worse and stuff, and then had to go back to
Yeah.
hospital. And they diagnosed me with MS, so multiple sclerosis, which is a neurological disease that affects your nervous system. So basically, it's all your sensories in your body. It eats off what we call the myelin sheath, which is basically just the blood-brain barrier at the top of your neck to your head, and it causes lesions to form. So what happens is, like, if a lesion forms in your brain, it kind of like cuts the signals, like a short circuit. So then sometimes I can't walk, or I can walk, and sometimes I can't use my arm, or I get like intense like shakes, or like my biggest thing is I get spasms. So like I
I can
will
relate to that.
knife, I'm danger. Yeah, like I'm literally, I probably should be a knife thrower because I'd be great at it. Because like I'm like this or that, and I scare myself. And then my knee drops out like all the time. Like, so my left side of my body is so much weaker than my right. And when I walk, I have foot drop and stuff. But sometimes I'll be walking and people will be like, is she drunk? I'm not drunk, but my knee is just collapsed. Yeah. Or I just keep walking one way, even though I'm trying to go this way. Like, it's a bit of a kerfuffle.
No, I relate particularly with the spasms, because that's part of like cerebral palsy that comes into that mix as well. So I can relate so much to the spasms, and also they always happen at the most inconvenient times. Like one of my spasms, not many people have. Like mine aren't overly aggressive. I have to say, I'm quite grateful that they're not overly aggressive and they're not too obvious. But the worst thing is one of my spasms, if you call it that, I almost call it like a tick. Is like like that saying, someone's walked over your grave. That's basically what happens
Yes.
to me all the time, but it always happens in really serious conversations. So I'm like square eye contact, looking deep into this person's soul, and I'm sitting there in the back of my head going, I can feel this coming, but I don't have any other way to hide this. Okay, fine. And it's not too bad if the person knows me. Like if it's Gina, she's like, oh, Charlie's at it again. But then if it's someone new, it's like, what the hell are you doing? Like, what did you just have some kind of really short seizure? And I'm like, no, this just happens. It just happens. Just carry on. I'm still listening to you. I just need this to pass before.
I can hear you. I just can't give you much. Like, it's so I've done like literally. I've had the worst times. I've like passed out in the middle of the street and had a spasm on the floor and wet myself in public.
Oh,
in Shepherd's Bush. So I don't even have embarrassment anymore. Like, what is embarrassment when you get to that point in life?
I think as well, like when it comes to disabilities, you kind of get over that quite quickly. Of like, because needing support with certain things or awkward situations happening to you, you just kind of go, oh fuck it, like it is what it is. Like it's just, I say, I think it's where you're also always in and out of hospitals and stuff. You kind of lose that like, oh, this person's seeing me naked. Oh well, whatever. Like carry on.
Yes. They're like, do you want me to? I'm like, look, I've been here for years. Like, literally, like, you probably see my body more than anyone I know. Like, it's fine. Let's just go. Let's do what you need to do. No, I feel you.
It's also remembering that it's not like it's not common knowledge that that's the way we often think. So oftentimes we'll do something and then someone's like, that's a bit weird. That's a bit weird. And I'm like, oh yeah, actually for your normal average Joe, that is a bit weird that I'm just going, yeah, no, like I'm happy for you to help me with this thing.
Please do. I need to. I need the help.
I need the help. What's one thing you wish people knew about MS?
That it's cognitive and it's invisible for the most part for most people. If I don't hold my mobility aid, no one has a clue what's going on. They just go, oh, look at you, being you. And it's all internal. Like it's like an inside out illness. Like if you could see my inside, it's literally on fire and it's like an electric skeleton being like, screaming at itself. But outside, I look cool, calm, and collective. But I'm probably going to forget your name.
That's fine. As I say, the amount of times people will just refer to me as the guy in the wheelchair, and I'm like, great, yeah, that works. But yeah, that is so true though. Oftentimes people like it's almost with conditions that fluctuate and they're different and you wake up one day is different to the next. People are like, oh my god, like what you should like you couldn't do this yesterday but you can do this today. It's like oftentimes you get it with ambulatory wheelchair users. They get so much crap because one day they can stand up, one day they can't. And it's like, just butt out. It's none of your business. Just leave it alone. Like it's not like just frustrates me.
Concern if you yeah. I mean, I always think like it comes with a lot of things I do, but I think, why is it bothering you? Like, why is my existence bothering you so much? It's weird. Like you must be I feel like you must have enough in your life to deal with.
Yeah.
But obviously people don't. It's like we're looking at us and making comments is like some sort of escapist thing that people do.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And then the other question that I always ask whenever I've got someone on the podcast with a hidden disability, because it's a common debate that I have internally, because on the one hand, being connected to the disabled community and knowing all of you guys and knowing all of our different conditions, there's a bit of me that, don't be so judgy, but then there's the other bit of me that's going, no, but like, how can we find an even balance? And that is with disabled toilets, because obviously with invisible disabilities, it's really hard because on the one hand, no one has a right to be like, oh, are you disabled? But then on the other hand, the only reason people do that is because people who aren't disabled use it. So if everyone, I said this to an IBD, I said if everyone did as they should do, no one would have any problem because everyone would just go, oh, Roxy's using the disabled toilet. She clearly has a reason to. But the rest in today's society, it's like, does that person really need that person to go in there, or are they just going in there to shag? Or
that's what I was gonna say. In high school, that was a thing, right? You'd realise that people wouldn't have to take drugs or have sex in disabled toilets. You never really saw anyone actually use them. And I can see why they ended up having radar keys attached to them for the fact of like, if you don't have one, I mean, you can get them very cheaply, but if you don't have one, then you probably can't get in, which is nice. But then leads to the fact if I'm in the toilet having a wee and you turn up,
oh, this is so great. It's so annoying. That was my next thing, was literally with radar keys. There's a massive design flaw that anyone and their nan can walk in. And like, it makes complete sense. If I fall over and I need help up, it makes complete sense that someone can get in and help me up. However, what that doesn't help is the fact that anyone with a key that just wants a wee or whatever they want to do can just wander in. And the amount of times you're just sat there on the toilet. All right, Karen, don't worry, I'll be done in 2 seconds. Like,
Someone's in
yeah.
here.
Oh, and it's worse when you're in a pub because it's loud, no one can hear you. You're like shouting, "Someone's in here! Someone's in here!" They literally don't care. They're coming in no matter what. And I've now just given up, and I'm like, "Look, if you're gonna come in, you're gonna come in, and then we're gonna have that whole awkward conversation of, yep, there is someone in here." Oh,
Yes, it's fun being disabled, I will say.
it's just Or like one of my other favourites was I was somewhere the other day, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we've got a disabled toilet." And then you look, and you're like, "That's up 2 stairs. How does that work?"
No lift either,
Nope,
probably.
no lift, and or it's like, "Oh, we're wheelchair accessible, but we've got 2 steps." Sure, that works. But
the best one is we're wheelchair accessible. We have a disabled toilet, but it doesn't work. That's always fun.
Yeah, or you get told that, and you've already been there for about an hour, and you're like, "Bro, I've had 6 pints, and I needed this information first before I." Oh, it was worse. Me and Gina went to Shaka Zulu in London, and they got there and they were like, "Oh, the disabled toilet's not working," and we were like, "But you knew that I was disabled because we asked when we booked whether it was wheelchair accessible, and I said that I'm a wheelchair user, and you didn't think to call me to say, by the way, the disabled toilet's not working." And then, just as I'm like, right, okay, we're gonna have to cancel this. We're gonna have to come back another day. They're like, "Oh, we've sort of got it working now, so it's okay. You can stay." But then also, so it was one of these ones where it wasn't a radar key. You had to put in like a pin to get in. And I'm like, right, okay. So then they were like, "Oh, so let us know when you need the toilet and we'll get someone to open the door for you in terms of give you the pin." And I'm like, "Just give me the bloody pin." Like, I don't want to be going over to Karen every 5 minutes being like, "Karen, I need a wee. Can you open the door, please?" Just give me the...
Yeah, but you and your wheelchair friends might come back and take over the toilets. And
Yeah, then what we're going to do?
So they're thinking.
Oh, it's just so frustrating. I mean, I always end up I hate how much I end up talking about toilets on this podcast. It's like, what is...
They're the biggest problem, though.
It is. Like, literally, the biggest problems, particularly for me, and I can imagine for a lot of people, is bathrooms. Bathrooms is just all we care about. Because, like, if we're booking a hotel, the first place we look is like, has it got an accessible bathroom? We don't give a shit what the rest of it looks like. We're like, oh, and they're like, oh, it's got 12 bars. And I'm like, I don't care. I need to find out whether... I can care about that stuff later. I need to worry about, has it got an accessible bathroom? And Gina will be like, oh, it's got a beach. And I'm like, if it's not got no bathroom, I don't want to know. Like...
Well, we can always like take you into the sea. Hopefully, it's got a beach.
Yeah, but beaches and wheelchairs, that's not a good combo.
Yeah, not a vibe at all.
It's
We've still got to deal with that. Like, so much trouble with beaches and wheelchairs. Or any mobility aid. I've got a Lincoln walking bike, and it's not a wheelchair, but getting it through sand is horrible.
Oh, I can imagine. Getting any wheeled object, is that even a word? Wheeled object? Getting any kind of wheeled piece of equipment through any kind of sand is just a non-starter unless it's one of them like specifically made beach chairs. But who the fuck decided the size of those things? Because if I'm like, how do you get on it? Do you just jump? Is that it, like?
And the wheels are like Tron wheels. They're so like massive. Yep. It's like...
So talking of equipment, like, so obviously your condition fluctuates day to day. So what sort of mobility aids do you use?
Well, I have my walking sticks, which are the Neo walking sticks, which I have in multiple colours for all the outfits.
Being all the fashionista.
Not be fashionable. I mean, come on. I have my Lincoln walking bike, which is like, I can never say the word, wheelchair users.
Yeah.
It's basically for someone, because technically I am. It's just that I don't use it all the time. Yep. It keeps your eye height rather than lowered down. So it's meant to keep me moving, because my biggest issue is the weight and the the longevity of movement.
Yeah.
And it allows me to do this. It's really hilarious because there's no wheels, but it looks like a bike.
Yeah.
But it's bright yellow. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous.
You're talking to Mr. Black. I have everything black, so like bright colours is not my thing. I think it's a ginger thing. It's like I look at bright colours and go, oh, that's gonna clash. Ooh.
No, I think we should get some rainbow clothes happening. I think we need to like get like total hippie vibe, right? Like outfits and embrace it all.
Well, it's like when we're
And then
changing on a small tangent just while it's in my head. It's like when they gave us, me and Roxy did London Fashion Week together. When I got my outfit for London Fashion Week, I was like, whoa, that's a statement. I'm not used to wearing that kind of statement, but fuck it, why not?
same for me too, though. Like, because although it's not just black that I wear, I'm very like emo and like gothic in my sensibility of fashion. I like to keep things like a certain kind of chic of darkness. So when someone handed me like colourful harem pants, I didn't know what to do. But I love being pushed out of my comfort zone, and now I know I can wear colourful harem pants. So
There you go.
we've won.
There you go. But yeah, sorry, I jumped in there because it was just like in my head. I'm going, yeah, that those Lucy and Yak trousers were a statement. They were a statement and a half. But yeah, so you were telling us about your what was it called? It was your
My Alinka walking
Alinka
bike.
walking bike. I was trying to think of the name, couldn't think of it.
Yeah, so it's bright yellow and it keeps you at eye height, so you can go further for longer. So it's like really great, like run airports, exhibitions, anything like that. Because Disneyland is like the best thing to have. It's easily folded up and you can fit it in most boots as well. But I got it from Canada. And I love it, to be honest, because it keeps me moving, which is optimal for MS, because if you don't move, then you're kind of screwed. Like your body will just shut down.
Yeah.
So the movement is like one of the treatments, which is hard to get in your head when you're first diagnosed. You're kind of like, what? But when you kind of get going, you realize actually this makes sense. And then my last mobility aid is my car. It's like my favorite one.
Oh, I love my car.
People don't really get that.
I love my car.
But it's so... Do you feel like you'd have the same kind of lifestyle you had if you didn't have your car?
No, not a chance, because it gives me so much freedom. Like I could just get in a car and go. Whereas even like with my wheelchair and stuff, I'm limited to distances. I'm limited to the terrain. Whereas my car just goes. It goes and that's it. But then also it doesn't help that I live just outside London in Kent, and like Kent's a place where essentially you got to drive. Like buses are a thing, but we're not great with them. And so like if you don't drive, it's kind of like you need a friend that does drive. So that was another element of it. But I whenever like my car goes in for service, I only lose it for a day, and I'm like, oh, but like I use it all the time. Like, what am I gonna do?
I lived in Kent for a little bit, so I totally know what you're saying. There's like also massive hills.
Yes.
So who wants to push a wheelchair up or down a huge hill that's like this? You're like, no. Weather sometimes up there can be great, and also I've never seen so much snow in my life at points.
Yeah, definitely.
It's very different than central London, and now I live in Harrow, so I'm not in London. I'm closer than I am when I was in Kent, but I need the car because transport is a bit terrible, especially on the weekends.
Yeah,
it's like
I mean, as well as that, like, I mean, they're getting better with public transport in terms of, particularly from a wheelchair user's perspective. Like, it is getting better, but then also there's so much anxiety that comes with it, with like trains. If they're going to remember you, are you going to try and get on a bus where there's already someone with a pram or a buggy or another wheelchair user? Then you're like stuck in the rain. It's just
like a Tekken fight.
Yeah,
wheelchair versus buggy.
Yes,
wins?
And it's basically that whole thing of who's more important, the newborn, the new mother, or the guy in the wheelchair. That I hate that as well, because it's a stereotype that we get of like, oh, but you're young and you're disabled, and it's like, yeah, but that still means I'm fucking disabled.
Yeah, I'm the worst. I'm like, I didn't choose to be disabled, but you choose to give birth.
That's fair.
Therefore, I think the space is mine.
Yeah, that is a fair reasoning. That is, but coming to the car thing, like what we said, the other thing I get, I don't know whether you get it as well, is people don't understand that disabled people are young too. I mean, I know I bang on about it on Instagram, and everyone's probably sick of me posting about it. But the whole thing of like the amount of verbal abuse I've got because everyone sees me pulling into the disabled bay in my mobility car, which happens to be quite new, which also is like quite sporty because that's the one I chose, then goes, oh, but
Same.
like, you must just jump out of the car. And I'm like, no, I'm actually disabled. Watch me put up my badge. Ready? Watch.
Well, I mean, for you though, the end result is it look really silly because then you have a wheelchair at the end of this. But for me, depending on how my movement is, if I'm literally going from one door to another, I might sometimes I forget my walking stick, and that's the worst thing I've ever done. Like forget my walking stick, go out, and then regret it 5 minutes later. But it's always the older person.
Yes.
Like I've had people just stare at me
Yep.
and just be like,
Yep.
and I'm like, it's all right, Karen, don't worry, it's not your job. Like,
Yep.
it's all right.
Yep.
I'm like, I get it. But like, if you flip it over, my face is on it, like being like,
Yes.
so like, I'm like, it's okay. Like, we all exist. I've not taken your space, and there's definitely like 6 spaces next to me. So don't worry, you'll have a space too. We can all sit at the table.
Yes, it just does my head in. Like, as well, the whole thing with kid space. That's another one I get. Like, oftentimes I've had to park in kids bay, and people get really like, I got called the worst word in the English language for parking in a kids bay until I put my badge up, and I'm like, whoa, judgy! Like, I could have had a child in the back. You would have been none the wiser.
Too young to have kids or be disabled.
Oh, disabled people have kids. What? Really?
No.
We're
not allowed.
No, we're not allowed to. We're not allowed out after 5. We're not allowed nice cars. We're not allowed nice clothes. We
or to go clubbing.
Not allowed to go. Oh, but that is a whole other ball game. Like, actually, like, clubbing is a thing where being a wheelchair user is just a non-starter. Like, why is it that every club has stairs? Why is it most people in the club are like off their face, can't walk anyway, and guess what? Neither can I. So why don't we just put more ramps in? Would make perfect sense.
Would be less accidents. Yep. I went to a club recently and the stairs were steep. Like, I had my stick and everything because it lights up and it's literally a glow stick, so why not?
Yep.
But after like 3 gins walking up and down the stairs, I was like, whoa, it's hard enough.
Yep.
But like, I literally am like trying to claw. And I've got people who, as drunk as they are, managed to get out of my way. But I'm like,
yeah,
like the living dead while like trying to have a rave.
My worst thing is my core. Like, I'm not too bad. I'd say there is the whole benefit of I'm always sat down, so everyone goes like, "Oh, it must be great for you." There is an element of that. Like, there's a much longer period between like, I'm okay, okay, now I'm not. But then also my core stability goes. So if anyone, like, if say for example someone's pushing me and they turn too quickly, I'm a goner. That's it. I'm going.
Let's talk about that though, because when I go to the airport, they go, "Do you want a wheelchair?" And I go, "Yeah," because like airports are ridiculously big, and when it gets to that, I can't maneuver through the airport at all. I'm like the worst. Someone else taking control of a wheelchair, and you're not expecting those movements is literally the biggest anxiety I have ever. I'm like, I feel so vulnerable. I don't know what to do. I'm like, I start panicking. I swear,
I must be such an angry person. Like, I must look like such an angry person because I'm also very specific about the people that I allow to push me. So, like, particularly at airport stuff, I'm like, no, I'm trying to be helpful. I'm like, look, dude, fuck off. Let Gina push. I get to a point because they don't listen, because they also don't expect me to be able to speak. So that's the other thing. I'm like, no, can you please let her push? And they're like, what? And I'm like, can you let her push? We don't. The worst thing is me is when it comes to airports, I'm very self-sufficient. Like, I know the drill. I know what's going on. Luckily for me as well, I don't need the aisle chair. So there's very limited support that I need in an airport, providing I'm with someone, which I'm not brave enough to travel on my own because I'm disabled. So I've always got someone with me. So I'm very much like, look, I don't need you. Realistically, the only bit I need you for is to speed me through passport control. That's it. And but the worst thing is they can't understand that. Like, there's 2 extremes of one, they don't understand those that need more support. Like, we've seen so many people post on social media about the difficulties they've had traveling. But then on the other hand, they have no understanding of if you've got your own systems and you know what to do. Like, it's really weird. It's really strange because they don't understand that people are different. That's what I really can't wrap my head around. Like,
protocols though, isn't it?
yeah,
Everyone's a protocol. Everyone's your risk, like we just say people just risk assessments and protocols to most people. Do you know what I
a
mean?
health and safety nightmare, you mean?
Yeah. You're a health. It's like, and I think different countries have had different experiences. So like over here, I will say over here, it's very budget disabled help. It's like the wheelchairs are very budget, they almost like
Yes, yeah,
trolleys. And
yeah.
I went to Paris, came up from Paris. The wheelchair was like, excuse me? Like, how expensive is that wheelchair? How padded is that?
Yeah,
How nice it was? Like,
yep,
no one asked any questions. Like, I felt like a queen. I was like, I'm going to come here again
yep.
because you made me feel amazing and you listened to me. And there was a bit of banter and it was just nice. And versus like some zombie trying to push me and pretending, just acting like basically I'm baggage. And I'm like, I'm not baggage. I'm actually a person.
Yeah,
Please,
yeah,
like, see that I'm a
yeah.
human.
And that's the other thing is like oftentimes like you probably get it as well. As soon as you get in that wheelchair, they talk to the person behind you. They don't talk to you. They talk to the person, and it really gets me. I'm like, bro, I'm the one that booked all this. Gina doesn't do like that sort of stuff. She's like, look, Charlie knows what he's doing, so I'm just gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it with him.
Knows what you
Yep.
want.
And the other thing that is a conundrum at the moment we're dealing with is obviously you've probably seen from my Instagram. I've travelled loads now with my front attachment. That throws fucking airlines through a loop. They don't know what to do with it. Like, literally, they're like, so is it an electric wheelchair? No. But it's got a battery? Yes. But it's not an electric wheelchair? No. How many times do I need to tell you? It's not an. Oh, God. And then.
Is that because of the storage, though?
Yeah, so it's all to do with, like, basically, it's all to do with battery, a certain wattage of battery can't go underneath unless it needs to. Like, I don't fully understand it, but like that's my understanding is they have a potential, they have a possibility to explode basically because of the pressure.
Oh,
Because there's
okay.
more pressure underneath the plane than there is on the top level where we are. But I know this. This is the most frustrating thing. I've done this now several times where I know what I need to do and I know what the airline want from me to be able to do it. So like they'll often say, okay, so the battery isn't in like because I put my attachment under the hold, like the actual mechanism, the attachment goes under the hold because I'm like I don't need to carry that, so it goes under, and then I have the battery in my hand luggage, and
Okay.
that's what throws people because then they'll go. First of all, they're like, "What are the?" Because you can only have a certain wattage of battery on the plane. They're like, "What wattage is the battery?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's this." Like I know the drill. Like the worst thing is I phone up before I fly and I tell them all this information, and then in the airport they ask me again, and I'm like, drives me absolutely nuts. Like it just really annoys me because I then sit there repeating information. Like I had it just recently come back from Denmark and going out. To be fair, British Airlines, in terms of British airports, sorry, they don't give a shit. Like they don't get. They're like, yeah, crack on. Unless it's BA. BA have a different system. But coming back from Denmark, they're like the bloke had to phone his manager to say that I've got a battery coming on board with me, even though I had evidence on my booking that it says that I have a battery with me and that I'd already confirmed it with everyone. So I'm sat there at check-in, waiting for this guy to hear back from his manager, and she's not answering, and I'm like, bro, I need to go. Like
Oh.
we need to get through security. We need to do all that stuff, and I'm sat here with a battery that I know I can take because guess what? I brought it with me, and you're stopping me, and it's the biggest frustration of mine at the moment because I'm like, the systems aren't updated in terms of like if I book my attachment on, I call it a gizmo. So if you hear me call it a gizmo, that's what I'm talking about. It's they put it down as an electric wheelchair, and I'm like, it's not because then everyone looks for the battery on the chair, and I'm like, it's not on the chair. Anyway, rant over. It just there is so much work that airlines need to do. I'm just also I find it really hard when you see all the stuff about people having negative experiences because yes, I've had my negative experiences, but I haven't touch wood. I haven't had an experience where like something's ended up being mangled or I've ended up like being massively manhandled. I mean, I did get manhandled by a smelly German man, but that was about the strength of it.
That sounds like a very interesting
Oh, it was
story.
just frustrating. So that was again classic case of they're not knowing. So the attachment came into that as well because it went through security and German police with like full guns, the works, came up to me and was like, "Why have you got a battery in your bag?" And I'm like, "Well, it's because I've got a thingy with me." And they're like, "Oh, but like, can you tell me, like, we can't see the measurement, the voltage of the battery?" And I'm like, "Oh, I've given the voltage battery here because I think the battery I was taking is covered in like waterproof tape to help it stay safe, basically."
Oh yeah.
So that caused a problem. But anyway, so while that's just before that all kicks off, I go through security and they go, "Oh, I want to check like in your cushion." And I'm like, "Right, okay, that's fine." And Gina's like stood 50 centimeters that way getting checked, and I'm like, "Okay, that's fine. Can we just wait until Gina comes through? Then Gina can stand me up safely, and then you can access the cushion, check the cushion, and we can sort everything out." No, this German guy decides to just come, put his hands underneath my arms, pick me up, grab the cushion, put me back down, test the cushion, and then come back and pick me back up and put me back down. And I'm like, I did not consent to any of that.
That is just, that's too
It's
much.
just
That's too
situations like that. You just sit there thinking, "Oh my god," or the only other one they get is they forget to bring my wheelchair up. That's the other one. So I'm sat there. I always wait till last because that's what you do. You just sit there, you wait till last for the assistance team to come up, and you're like, I'm like, "All right, everyone's been off. Can I have my wheelchair?" And they're like, "There's 4 of us," and they go, "Oh, so how many of you got wheelchairs?" 4. I mean, there's 4 people, 4 wheelchairs. It's not rocket science. They go back down. 10 minutes passes again. They come back up. How many wheelchairs? 4. Okay. And then go back down, come back up. So are they all manual? Yes. We've already told you this. Oh my god, just bring up the wheelchairs. Like, literally it took Gina going down like to the front of the like where just off the plane and going, right, that one's this person's, that one's this person's, that one's this person's, and that one's ours. It's just like,
Thank the Lord for
oh my
Gina.
god.
What do we do about Gina?
I honestly don't know. Honestly, I think I would just be in a ditch somewhere. Like,
going, "Excuse me, can you bring my wheelchair?" And everyone's like, "No, no, whose wheelchair is it?" You're like, "Mine."
I'm just sat there on the plane like 24 hours afterwards. Like, I really need a wee.
I always find the weirdest thing though, planes as well. Like everyone just jumps up as soon as the plane lands and thinks they can run off the plane, and I'm just sitting there chilling, just waiting for full VIP treatment, and they're all like rushed, and I'm like, "Where are you rushing to? You meant to be on a holiday, like relax."
Just chill. What I do love though, as much as you have to wait till the end, I do love the fact that you tend to get to baggage control and your bag's just there ready, and I'm like, okay, cool, sweet.
And you're always there before the people that ran off the plane, anyways.
Or my other favourite thing is, if I noticed, I mean, I do this as well, so it's not. This is just a general thing. It's always hilarious to watch a plane land and just listen to how many phone dings you hear as soon as they say, "Right, you can now turn your phone off flight safe mode." Oh my god, it's like, quick!
I've been missing everything.
It's also that the worst thing is that all your 4G just disappears because everyone's trying to use it at the same fucking time. But yeah, it's crazy. We've ended up on a really big tangent. I apologise.
Best conversations are
Exactly. What about you? So you mentioned briefly uni. What was that like for you with uni? Obviously, from what I understand, the episode you mentioned earlier happened during that sort of period. So that must have been quite a big like.
Well, it happened just before when I was in my. So basically, I'd done my college stuff, but then I was a bit weirdly off, but I didn't know why I was off, basically. And then that happened as I was entering a IFAD course, which is an intense foundation art and design, and that's how that happened. And then it was just like, I think it was 2 years into my uni course where obviously it felt like crap in general, and I didn't know why. I thought, fashion student, doing too many hours, 12-hour days, too much coffee, like, what are you doing, vibes? And then they were like, you got MS. And what happened was just kept getting worse and worse. And to be honest, like, I'm not young, basically. So back then it was like, there was no disabled support. I mean, it's terrible now, but it was atrocious. They didn't really exist. So as much as like my dean was lovely, there was nothing there for her to support me.
Yeah.
So I never really finished my last year. So I've got like a HND rather than a full degree on that basis. And it annoys me a little bit.
It's almost like it's almost there, but not quite. Yeah, I get that.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, like having the journey I've had and the things I've done, I've still probably used my degree more than some people that I know, or my H&D more than some people I know that got their full degree. That's just how it's planned out and how it's worked out, and I'm grateful for that. But it's frustrating when you've basically decided in your life that you want to do something and you really love it and you didn't manage to finish it. And then obviously because we live in England and the cost of going to university just keeps rising and rising. I feel like, can I even really afford to go back and finish that year? And I think it's gone past when you can just add the top-up year on, because some degrees, if you do H&D, you can actually go and do a top-up year. So I'd have to redo it. And now, like I read the news the other day, it was like, uni students' fees are going up by 50%. I was like, it's all right, I'm okay.
Jesus.
We live in a social media world where, like, basically, if you can just do something yourself and create something and get it out there, you can still have the same journey if you want to.
It's similar. It's interesting. Like so my background, I did really well at school in performing arts. So like that was where everyone sort of saw me going, and everyone expected, oh, Charlie's going to go and do performing and whatever else. And the main reason I didn't, because at the time it just felt like I was never going to be able to access the roles that I wanted to access, because I'm always going to be cast the type and always going to be the guy in the wheelchair that, like, there's only so many. Yeah, guess what? I'm the guy in the wheelchair. Big shock. Like, I was never going to really get a role where I could just be me in terms of like my acting ability. It was always going to be, oh, we need a guy in a wheelchair, and that's that. I mean, there's been strives to fix that and change that over time, but at the time when I left school, it was like, and as you said, like, particularly with the creative industry, a lot of it you don't necessarily, you more need to know the right people and say the right things and do the right things than necessarily be able to go, I've got a degree. Because like I always joke and say, to be, I mean, I don't know, like this is me guessing. So anyone that is a performer and says that's completely wrong, I take that, I accept that. But in my head, I'm like, realistically, to be a good actor, to be like a successful actor, you've got to have a quirky face or something that people want. You've got to have a decent acting ability and a decent agent, and be able to say the right things and do the right things. What my thought process was. So I was like, no one goes, I know, but have you got a degree? Like, there's an element of like, are you classically trained? Yeah, that element, yeah.
Absolutely.
But that's something you can learn and you can grow with. But yeah, in terms of like, so it's interesting. It's interesting, like I say, with the creative industry, there's so many different avenues you can go down. Like, I love what I do now in terms of like, no one really tells me what to create. I just fucking do it. And that's my favorite thing. It's like I'm almost building something myself, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
it's way more fun that way.
Yeah, defo. And plus as well, like I get to be the goofy idiot me that I actually am. So I love that. I love that. But actually, talking of like social media and like being creative, what got you, was that what got you into going on to social media? Because it gave you a creative outlet to be sort of that creative self that you are.
Yeah, I got frustrated. I was doing fashion styling, so like I was working for magazines and doing fashion runway shows, but then my illness got really bad and I just couldn't handle the time frame, or even just going around like London and carrying press bags and stuff was just horrible. Um, and I got really frustrated. I was really depressed for like 2 years. I didn't even go outside, and I didn't know what to do because I just felt like, oh god, everything was over. And I started to like, well, I've been misdiagnosed. I feel the way I feel. I have no creative outlet. I can't be the only person that feels like this. Surely there's other people that feel like me. And I just started talking about it. That's how it started. Was I started speaking about it. I started doing small projects with friends to see if I still even had an ability to do creatively, not even physically. Do you know what I mean? And I thought on social media, it is a space to be able to show people what I can do. I still feel, though, in all honesty, Charlie, like to this day, I don't feel like I'm still giving my full creativity just because my MS causes so much fatigue
Yeah,
and every day is like so different. It's really hard to commit. And sometimes I in my brain, there's so many, you probably feel so many ideas, like I do this, do that, and I just sometimes physically cannot execute them. It's frustrating. And I think sometimes the people, like you said, you've got Gina, like you need a team of people just to realize something that you want to do
yeah,
creatively, because we are not just one thing as people, we're all different
yeah,
things. And I do social media content, but that's not my love. like my love is a bit more like film based and art based and fashion based, a bit more like tangible art. Not saying like content creation isn't art, but
I
it's
get you.
more about advertisement.
Yeah, I completely get you. So what is that? What would you say is your big creative passion? What is the one that's like, oh, if I could nail this, I would love my life.
I would love. See, the thing is, I can't sew. Oh, I could sew, but I physically can't sew now because I physically cannot control. But I would have loved to make an adaptable fashion brand that I think is cool.
I'm
Do you know
with
what
you
I
there.
mean? Like,
I'm with you there. I completely get like yeah. I think that's the worst thing being a creative person. Obviously, there's the limitations we have in terms of our own challenges and our own difficulties that come with our conditions. But then there's the other element of like there's so much we want to do, and a lot of it comes down to knowing the right, because of the experiences we've got. It all comes down to knowing the right people and being able to get them to help you to get to where you want to get. And it's really, really frustrating. Like there are so many ideas where I'm like, oh, that would be great, but I don't know where the fuck to start. That is the worst bit. And then obviously you add in the, like you say, the limitations when it comes to the physical side of things. I mean, prime example for me, from my perspective, when I got into fitness and got into weightlifting and all of that, I really wanted to be a disability PT. And yes, there are disability PTs out there. There are people out there that are
there
doing
are,
it.
yeah.
But at the time, I was like, where the fuck do I even start trying to get clients? Because not many disabled people rock up at a gym like, Wagwan, have you got someone that can train me? And it's like, no one really does that. No one does that. So like,
No.
it's really weird. It's really weird. And like, that's where it becomes really hard because there's a community out there that we want to serve, but it's also getting there to be able to access them, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's like I need to like I'm starting to find the people that I know that can help with the process, but it's also knowing what you want to do.
Yes.
And I have a vision, but it's also that fact of like how much information is too much information.
Yes.
Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? I don't want to tell you everything, and then next week I know that you've made it, and I'm like, oh, great,
No,
that's
that
really
is the
helpful.
horrible thing. Being wanting to create your own thing. It's also because I have what there's what I'll tell you about it after it. Say reasoning why I don't want to air it on here so that everyone goes and makes it. Like I have that thing of like the people I want to work with on this. I need to be able to trust them fully that they're going to help me. Not that I want, like the thing is, I don't want to be like, no, this is my idea. Like I'm going to take all the credit, but I don't want like I say them to go away and be like, oh, I'm going to create this now and I'm going to do it in this direction because I would have seen it going in a different direction. Because as you said, with the something you're trying to create, you'd want to do it in the style that is you rather than the style that is everyone else. So that is the biggest problem when you've got an idea like that. It's like, oh, I've got this idea and I want to execute it, but then I don't want to get everyone involved because then it gets all mudded and it doesn't quite work.
And also their ideas get involved, and like it's the thing. I was listening to someone else talk recently, and they said like social content. The thing about it is for them and just art in general is that we've stopped risk taking. We've all conformed to one thing because it works, and people will clap for you. Like if we do podcasts every week, and they're like, "This is what you do, and you're good at it." People expect that, and when you go and do something, you go, "I'm making a Charlie feature film." People might not respond to that just as well, and that's sometimes hard to take as a creator. And it's about learning to risk take in a space that doesn't feel so safe. And I feel like as disabled people, we should almost be able to do that
Yeah,
because that's kind of the reality of our life. But at the same time, when you feel acceptance for something, when you've dealt with so much of that, it's really hard to keep like
changing.
pushing past
Yeah,
that, like, and making yourself vulnerable once
yeah.
again when you're just actually probably sick of being vulnerable.
Yeah, no, I completely get that. It's like that whole thing of you. It's like almost like I don't know about you, but have you ever like considered like recreating your social media or going in a different direction? Then you're like, oh shit, do I completely start a new one? Do I delete everything that I've got and start afresh with the account that I've got, or do I go in this direction? That's the biggest minefield to try and tackle. And as you say as well, if you want to go into a different space, like when I was coming into this podcast space, I had to really drill into my own head, like, look, it's going to be a snowball. It's going to be a slow burner. It's going to suck. It's going to feel horrible watching those videos, watching it get absolutely no views. but I've just got to go through it because I did it with Instagram and I did it with everything else. But like, it's almost like just trying to talk to yourself and go, you've done this before, you can do it again. It's in a different area, but
Yeah.
you know exactly what you're doing, and you'll figure it out. You figured it out once, you can do it again. But then try to do that self-talk of it's all going to be okay. Oh, it's like, and it's that whole thing as well. Is not
Self-investment.
conforming, like you said, not conforming to what everyone else is doing. Like, I mean, I like to think I've positioned myself in a very good way of like I get away with a lot more shit that people don't, and I should probably push it a little bit more because of my name of NQPC. The whole idea is like I can push the boundary just a little bit more than other people because if anyone questions me, I'm like, bro, it says it in my name. Get over it. um, but then
Yeah.
on the flip side of that, like I try and be really like as positive as I can be and really like happy go lucky because that is my ethos when it comes to disability. But then oftentimes when you watch things go, and we're talking a lot about social media, and I know that's not your ideal space, and we will go back to talking about you, I promise.
No, that's
But it's
fine.
just that whole thing of almost like negativity sells. Like negativity sells. Like
Well,
if I'm
that's
not moaning about something or bitching about something or something's gone wrong in my life, then no one gives a fuck.
I do love social media for so many things,
Yes,
and especially for my creativity. Like I follow certain people and do like avant-garde fashion, and it keeps me like my brain
ticking. Yeah,
active and stuff. But like you, I don't want to say I'm super positive, but like I do come from a positive space because I've already been through my negative
yeah,
journey of my disability. I'm come to terms with that. But I know if I was to sit on Instagram and say negative things, my follow account probably shoot up
yeah.
because people
Pip,
like
yeah,
negativity. It's
yeah,
contagious. It's like people what it's like EastEnders. They're glued to they want to
yeah.
see what's happening next.
And it's like, and, I'm not going to name any names, but like certain things happen on social media, and you just see that like there'll be people that often have things go wrong, and like I'm not saying that should happen. Any of that shouldn't happen, but you know, there comes a point when you sit there and you go, "How the fuck do you keep finding yourself in these situations?" Like,
Well, I have a spirituality thing where like you can manifestation and
oh,
stuff,
okay,
and if
yeah,
you're in a I feel like you
yeah,
can bring things into your realm. That's like not even something I speak about on Instagram because I feel that also throws people like through a loop, literally. But I think sometimes you can attract certain situations in your life, like you said. Sometimes it's what you put in, and out to the universe, the time you put in,
yeah,
dedication to something you're doing. And I think that how do you always end up in the same position? And I also think, are you not bored of complaining
yeah,
yourself?
yeah,
Like, I get we want change, but I'm all about changing rights
yeah,
rather than I am about just complaining about what happened in Starbucks. Like, I'm like, well, if there's something that's deep, like, we're actually like, I tried to use something and it was, I will maybe say something small, but my brain kind of goes to a place of like, how do I actually change this in law?
yeah,
And I do respect that social media can help that in a sense where if you're like a certain kind of person with a big enough following, you can get people to sign things and get things pushed into places
yeah.
where people will see them. So it's like a double-edged sword. It's like so good and so bad.
Yeah,
Social media.
it's I love it. Like I love it because as you say, it gives me a creative outlet. There's so many great people I've met through it. I mean, there's so like literally so many cool opportunities. And one of the questions I always ask on this podcast, which I haven't asked you yet actually, is oftentimes people ask me like, if you got the choice, would you hand back your disability? And people are really shocked to find out like I'd actually answer that question point blank no, and it really scares them as well because how little time I spend thinking about it. Because I'm like, because I then sit back and go, hold on, if I wasn't disabled, I probably wouldn't met Gina, I probably wouldn't run a podcast, NQPC wouldn't exist. How many weird and wonderful opportunities have I been given?
Yeah.
Yet how many amazing people have I met? How much more of a well-rounded person has it made me? I oftentimes like people will come out with shit, and I'm like, you can't just say that. Like you can't like. And then I sit back and I take a step back, and I'm like, oh shit! It's because I've been exposed to so much more than what other people are exposed to. Because there's such a diversity when it comes to disability and the people within that community. But then also because of having a disability, I feel like it also makes you a little bit more understanding and empathetic to other people's situations and not being like Mr. Judgy Pants going, oh no, but I'm disabled too. Like,
I love our community, to be honest. Like, same as you, like, I wouldn't hand it back. Like, yes, it felt at points it interrupted
Yes.
what my grand plans were, but actually I feel like it's actually caused me to have greater plans. I treat myself way better. The way I look is way better. What I'm doing feels like it actually has a soul behind it and a conscious point of view. Maybe what I was doing before was really shallow and I didn't even know it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I appreciate like everyone I've met on this journey, including yourself, the things I've been able to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know if I'd even thought about doing them previously.
Yeah. We'll both say it because we both were there, but shout out to Victoria, because most of us, like, that's when I really scale it back and go, fuck, like, I can turn around and say I was at London Fashion Week. Who the fuck can say that? Not many people. And it's mad. And then when I strip it back, like you say, like, the more shallow perspective of if I didn't have my disability, I come from quite a heavy, like, football head background. So my thing would have probably been I would have probably tried to be a footballer, failed miserably, and ended up working in finance and working. Not that there's a problem with working in finance, but like yeah, like I'd end up not being my creative self and probably wouldn't have the side hustles that I have and the perspectives that I have because I'd just be like, oh, it is what it is. It's like I wouldn't have the life exposure that I have now, and like it's such a mind fuck because people who aren't from that world don't get it. They're like, wait, so if you got the choice to walk, you would say no, and I'm like, oh yeah, like because also
I get it all.
overrated, bro, way overrated.
Do you get it all the time? So I get it all the time where people are like, "Oh, I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I
I
couldn't be
couldn't
you, and I'm like, oh
be
yeah,
you." And I'm like, I mean, you don't deserve to be this fabulous, to be
yeah,
fair, but like,
yeah,
you know, it's actually really cool if you
yeah,
think about it. Yeah, there's some bad days, but there are some great
yeah. That
ones, like really amazing
Yeah, and as I
ones.
say, all the people, like I always come back to the people because particularly in the last 2 years, I've had so many moments when if I take a roll or a step back, like I'm like fuck, like shit. I've met so many people where it's like they've opened my eyes to so many different things, but then they've also become really good friends and like really connected. But also the perspectives they give you is really like whoa, okay, this is really opened my eyes to some stuff that I didn't know. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
it is crazy.
definitely.
Like as I say, oh, I couldn't be you, or to bring it back to relationships a little bit, it's like Gina gets it all the time. Like, oh, how are you with Charlie? And I'm like, no, well, because we get along. Funny enough, like that's your problem. You see the wheelchair or the disability or the walking stick first. Like, fucking yeah, it's I don't understand people's perspectives, but it's just a lack of exposure. I mean, that's what I'm putting it down to is the fact that they don't know any different. So they're like, hey, yeah, whatever. And then I can kind of relate to that because I think back and go, my parents didn't know anyone with a disability before me. Now they pretty much know the encyclopedia when it comes to disability.
Yeah, no, when you know more, like you can do more and you can be better in life. And I think people don't know how awesome people in the disability community actually are. Like they're actually some of the best people I've met. And to date someone with a disability, that's so bad. To date someone with a disability is what I'm trying to say. Cognition. You should be lucky,
Yeah.
really, to be
Also,
honest. I don't think you know the
we give
value.
you free parking, free gig tickets. Like there's other benefits.
Yeah.
No, but like as you say as well, there's also I think we're a lot more empathetic as well. I think a lot of the people, as I said earlier, we're a lot more conscious of people's situations and that everyone's different, and we can't just be like, oh, but I'm disabled too, or I grew up in this area, so I must have the same upbringing that you had. As you know, people are
Mm.
completely different, and that's a byproduct of what disability gives you. But yeah, we went on again another tangent, but we love a tangent on the podcast, so that's all good. But yeah, so tell us more. Like we sort of slowly tapped into where you see your vision going with slowly creating maybe a fashion brand or something that really like identifies as you in the style that you'd want it. Is there anything else that you're working on at the moment that you're thinking, oh shit, I really want to go in this direction?
I'm doing a lot of panel conversations, speaker opportunities. Not
Yes,
really.
love
Well, they are
that.
fashion related because they're like talking to companies about the importance of adaptable fashion.
Yep.
And actually like how that benefits everybody, not just disabled people. And in the same realm of it being more than just shirts and pants.
Yeah.
And like I want to go to Couture Fashion Week and be able to wear an outfit. Like I don't know if you saw the Louis Vuitton show that Pharrell Williams did yesterday.
I read
Incredible.
about it, yeah.
But can you have a look at it? It was insane. But like seriously, adaptable sleeves. Like I want some Louis Vuitton that I can put on with ease. Like I want to get to those spaces, but speaking to those companies to get them to understand why it's important and how it doesn't just benefit disabled people but everybody. And also it brings another element of style. Like why not, like we've had it before, like a jacket where you can take the sleeves off.
Yeah.
It's quite simple.
Yeah.
We've done it before. But it's also adaptable. I know they don't know that, but it is. And it's also putting out adaptable things to people that they don't know was adaptable, and educating people on how innovative disabled people have been in their own lives, like in their day-to-day things that they use today. It was probably made because a disabled person needed it.
Yeah, definitely. And like I think one of my big bugbears with the adaptive clothing, I can't think of the word, section, is a lot of the time, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think, like you say, there needs to be a lot more collaboration with brands that already exist for them to create products. Because a lot of the time, like people will go shopping and they want a certain item, but they want it because they might enjoy that brand, but then they can't be in it because it doesn't suit their needs, and there's too much of like it has to be a separate line for disabled people instead of like we've just adapted this item that you like to suit someone who might have this difficulty, instead of like, oh no, you need to go shop over there.
Without charging us like an extra 50% because it now has an extra zip or something. Like, come on, like especially for companies that exist, and that's why I think can make it cheaper, is because you already have the connection. Do you already have the wholesale, the adaptable connections? You have the ateliers, you have the people that can do that, and you have suppliers way easier than any of us will. And it's so hard because it is like, oh, it should be disabled people making it, and they are. But at the same time, we know, regardless, like most fashion things, someone's going to see someone else's design, they take it and then they make it. But you should be able to get Louis Vuitton or Prada if you want it, and a pair of trousers that's fit a wheelchair user, so the length and stuff are not off and stuff like for you, and you can just feel chic.
It's like one of my favorite things. Like I love, always have loved my stuff to be more fitted. Trying to find fitted trousers for someone with like limited lower half mobility, which basically means you have chicken legs for legs, is quite a challenge. And like, especially when you turn around and be like, oh, what jeans do you wear? Oh, I wear spray-on ones. The amount of shit I get for the fact that I wear spray-on ones, or I'm going to say it on the podcast, women's jeans. Like, the amount of crap that I get for that, but they fit me the way I want them to fit, so like, it's fine.
All my emo friends used to buy women's jeans, like when Topshop was
yeah.
None of my emo friends bought men's jeans. They're like, what are you talking about? Like, the women's jeans way fit better. They're like nicer. They've got more stretch. They're greater lengths. I'm like, yeah, like I totally agree though. I don't think clothes should have a gender. It drives me mad. Like, it shouldn't have a ability, disability, and it shouldn't have a gender. Like, clothes should just be things in a store, and we go in, we go, ooh, I like that. Ooh, I like that. And you take it out with you and you put it on and you live happy.
Yeah, completely agree. Like, it is, but the one thing I do on the like gender thing, the one thing I do share the pain of, fucking, why are women's pockets so small? Bro,
you're meant to have a handbag. Come on.
But you don't put your phone in your pocket. And also, like, anyone tested the fact that the majority of phones now are bigger than women's pockets?
Yeah, they're huge, and you don't want to put them in your back pocket because even if it fits, like, it makes your bum look weird. And it's like,
and then also you have the whole thing of like, once you go to the toilet, then it ends up in the toilet. It's just not. It's not ideal. It's just
that's
not ideal. I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt, and I'm good. But
yeah, same actually.
There's such a conversation when it comes to inclusive fashion, I think, as well. Of like, we're slowly seeing things get better, but then also it's coming away from that. I don't know about how you felt about it. Like, a lot of the inclusive fashion, it all looks very medical. It's all very clinical. It's all very looks like it looks like my nan would buy it. Like that is
It's not
that is
sexy.
the whole thing, and it's like, no, I want, like you said, I want fashion that represents me, not represents what society thinks I am.
I'm really happy that, like, obviously I talk about a lot about sex and disability, and that's like a whole other conversation. But like, I'm so happy that I'm starting to see there's adaptable underwear brands, and they've always
Yep.
existed, but they're a bit bland.
Yep.
And now there's like sexier, adaptable fashion brands coming
Yeah.
up. So that because they realize that we have a pulse,
Yes.
and maybe we want to look hot.
Yep.
Like, not just like our basic skims. That's our Monday to Friday during the day stuff. What about Saturday night moments or our everyday moments, depending on what outfits you're wearing? You want satin lingerie and lace and latex.
Yep.
That's like accessible.
Completely agree.
And it's nice to see it's happening.
Completely agree. And like, that's the thing, is people don't see disabled people as like general people. It's like, oh, we're an afterthought. It's like, oh, we might do something with disability. It's always tokenism. It's always like, if we've got to do it to show that we're like an inclusive company, just that whole.
It'll all be in July. We'll just do it all like this month's like
Yeah.
queer month. Everything for gay people right
Yeah.
now, and then everything for disabled people will be in July because it's Disability Awareness Month. And then after that, you can go fuck yourself.
Basically, yeah. It's like, it's so frustrating because it's all just as we said. If they actually, I always say this whenever I'm on panels. If businesses just sat down with a group of disabled people from all different kinds of disabilities, I'm not saying all wheelchair users or all this one or the other. The products and the like community you'd be able to create would be insane. Like, it would be insane. And as you said earlier, they've got the resources and the ability to just up and do it because they can. Like, there's nothing stopping them. But it's just getting them through that whole. We can also make you a shit ton of money if you if you let us do this. We can make you some serious money.
Yeah, I do sometimes. I think it's the visibility, because sometimes when I'm in places and panels and things, I think, I'm not saying you don't use the call disabled people, but I always think there's someone cooler that I think that brand would have made more sense of that brand's ethos.
Yeah.
That already exists, that you could have invited them to, and then that way the brand sees someone that kind of has their vision but also likes what they like, and it's about pairing people up.
Yeah.
In the right situations that work for everybody. And I think sometimes it's off, and sometimes it doesn't really work very well, because we tend to, like on social media, just pick certain people to do certain things because they're more visible, or they have higher numbers or whatever. But I don't think it should be about that, because some of the people I know that have like no followers at all have a certain kind of ethos and a skill set that actually would be better to work with a brand to create something like that. And then you put it on the person that has 200,000 followers.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Completely get you. And I think there's something to be said as well for the little person. Like, I've worked on projects before, and like I work on the podcast, and everyone's like, oh, but like, why don't you want this massive guest? And I'm like, because as much as I love them, and I also got to remember that I'm by no stretch of the imagination big, no stretch at all. But I wasn't as big as I am now compared to then. So like, I always try and think, no, I'm going to give the smaller creators a leg up, because they can bring something, like their story could bring something completely different to the game, and they just haven't had someone go tell me the story. So it's like you say, it's like a whole thing of like, if it perfectly aligns with what they're doing, like any brand, I think you're better off working with a complete fanboy or fangirl, fan person,
Yeah.
than you are working with anyone else, because they're gonna smash it down people's throats. Like, they're gonna go absolutely everywhere shouting about this brand. Like, yeah, it's mad. Like, one of the brands that I love is Billy Footwear. Billy Footwear, I absolutely love them to pieces, but haven't had the opportunity to work with them yet, despite asking quite a few times and being like, guys, please, like, I'm begging you, just let me in. But then, like I say, in that perspective, those are the people you want representing your brand, because you pretty much don't have to tell them anything. They're just going to run with it and scream about your product, which is exactly what you want.
Because they already love it. It's like a win-win. Like, if you love something already, it's really easy to sell.
Yeah. The amount of times I've seen people try and sell something, I'm like, you've never used that in your life.
Oh, and you never
Yeah,
will.
I'm gonna.
We'll see it on Vinted in
Yeah,
2
I'm
weeks.
gonna use it for the whole of a day, just for the promo, and then I'm like I say, gonna sell it on Vinted. It is madness. I am just conscious of time, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit you with the last question, which I did pre-warn you about before the episode began, and I asked every guest it, and that is, what's one piece of politically correctness that you really strongly agree with or disagree with?
Ooh, see, I've been thinking about this the whole time. Political correctness. I think it's the words that throw me.
Basically, what's a
Political
okay? I'll strip it back.
correctness.
What's a pet peeve of yours, or like what's something that you really wish people either talked about more, like you're really passionate about it, or you just don't agree with? Like I said to you before we recorded, I've had guests where they've said mashed potatoes is the devil's food. They've said drinking's overrated. They've said that why has everyone got to stare at
Mashed potatoes,
people?
devil's
I've had it all.
I hate it's a phase. Like, it's a phase. That's a phase. Like, whether disability is a phase, whether what I like is a phase. Like, I hate that's a phase. Like, why
Oh, so like
is that a thing we say to
you mean
people?
like someone saying like, oh, because people have said this to me, oh, that was when you were going through your emo phase, like that whole thing. Yeah,
Yes. And
yeah,
I'm still emo
okay,
to this day. You still wear spray on jeans. Like, come on. Like, it's
yeah,
not a phase. It's something that's going to be part of me forever.
yeah.
I hate that's a phase. Like, and who are you to decide how I feel? And that's what I feel about most things. It's like that kind of, I'm going to push it on you. And then also just the political correctness of like not talking to a disabled person directly.
Oh, I mean, we touched on it quite a few times in this episode. That whole like, oh, the disabled person can't speak for themselves. It drives me nuts. Oh,
Yeah.
just the frustration. Just why? Why do people assume? Like, don't assume. It's because the stereotype is that disabled people can't think for themselves and make their own decisions, and it drives me round the twist.
At least try to conversate and ask.
Yeah,
Like, maybe I can't vocally speak, but if you haven't asked the question.
yeah,
And also pronouns. I will say, actually, I said this the other day, like, I went to Waitrose and I don't gender conform, although my pronouns are she, they, and my partner is trans, and calling someone he, her, she, because of the niceness, the political correctness of being like, oh, sir, please follow me this way. Like, you could just say, can you follow me this way? Like, just lose it.
yeah,
That also drives me mad because it's just like a fake political correct nicety that people use, but it feels like autopilot and not reality.
yeah. I get that. What is your view? I'm curious as well because it's something that I have often thought about. What's your view on someone like using the wrong pronoun by mistake? By that being like the
Just correct
yeah.
yourself.
I mean,
Just say like
more so.
if you don't know.
I didn't actually propose. I didn't pose that question correctly. Like more so, like in terms of people, because I think there's a lot of conversations surrounding in pronouns when it comes to like people don't want to offend, but then their autopilot is to try and use the stereotypical pronouns. So then the whole thing of I don't want to upset you by accidentally using the wrong one. So the almost I'm not getting to my point here. I know what I want to say, but I can't figure out how to say it. This is really annoying.
It's okay. I think I know what you mean. Like, basically, I'll give you three things. You can either go, "Hi, I'm Charlie. My pronouns." I say, I'm assuming your pronouns right now. He,
Yeah,
him. And I can go, "Oh, I'm Roxy. I'm she, they." Or you can go, "Hi, Roxy." If you know my name, you might not, or you
yeah,
may. Or you may go, "What's your name?" And then I go, "Roxy," and you go, "What's your pronouns?" You give me a chance to say it. Or you can just use gender neutral pronouns. You don't have to, like, it's like a default thing we've been all
yeah.
programmed to be like, we have to
This is what I
say
was trying to say. I'm
her
like
or
because
man. It's weird.
I have two of my friends that use different pronouns, and it's that whole thing. Like with them, I'm very comfortable with where I've known them by their like stereotypical pronouns initially. I'm still getting used to like all not autopilot doing it. So like it's having that ability for me. I'm like, okay, you're not gonna flip out at me for using the wrong one as long as I correct myself. Where that's I think a big fear of
Yes.
mine, and I wonder whether it's a big fear of the communities of if you get it wrong once, you really don't want to cause friction because it wasn't intended. And I'm a big believer of, if they constantly do it, you gotta nip that shit in the bud, because that's not fair, because you've corrected them once and you've said that this is how you want to be referred to. And then if someone doesn't have enough self-respect to be like, okay, I'm gonna go with exactly as you've asked, that's when it becomes a problem. But I think for me, it's hard because people, as you say, are so conditioned to use the traditional ones, and that's when I'm like, oh, it's really.
It's also like, we create everything. We're creative, right? So be more creative with your word. It's actually like a creation. And also, if you do have something wrong, right, and your intent was a good thing, as long as your intent is pure. That's the thing about people. Some people's intent, like you said, is not, and they're just gonna be like, yeah, I don't care, and this is what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
You're an arsehole. But if you're someone that made a mistake and you're like, I'm actually really apologize. I didn't mean that. I'll do better next time. No one's ever going to be mad at you. And then also for the person that you've misgendered or mispronoun, they can always pull you to the side after and be like, look, like, just to a polite reminder, my pronouns are this, and this, and I'd really prefer if you did that. And you give, both people have got to give people room to breathe and a chance to prove whether they're an ally or not. And then if it doesn't work out and that person doesn't care, or that person's being like too aggressive because you've got something wrong, something once or twice, then maybe you're not right to be conversating with each other anyways.
That, I think that's okay. I finally got to where I was trying to go, was basically like, I think there's a common fear where people are constantly worrying about misgendering. It's the same when it comes to disability. People are so fearful about, oh shit, should I be using the word disabled? Should I be using the word like wheelchair user? Should I be using the word differently abled? It's just a whole minefield that people often get really like on edge about. So I'm very like, when it comes to the disability side of things, to bring it back into a court where I sort of know a bit more and I'm not learning, whereas with pronouns I'm learning a little bit more. It's that whole thing of, I'm very much of the belief of, look, if you fuck up, you fuck up. That's fine. I can sort it out. It's not a problem. It's more if you consistently do it and you're not learning. That's when the problem comes in.
Yes.
So like, if you,
because it shows you don't care.
if you come in and I'm going to use a buzzword, so I'm going to not buzzword, a word that make people feel uncomfortable. But if someone comes in and go, oh, spaz, I'm going to be like, not quite, not quite the right word, and here's why. And as long as once I've corrected them, they don't keep using that word, then it's, I think that was a really bad example. But hopefully we got the.
No, but I get what you mean, and it's really sad because sometimes I find children the most adaptable. Like a child will go to you, "What's your name? What are you?" And you say to them, they'll be like, "Okay, great," and they get off. Unless they have the worst parents that are like actual assholes, and they've just been like, "You call that person that," and that's just a whole other ball game. But generally, you realize how accepting children are and how they accept what you've said to them. They just move on and they don't care and they don't take it on too deeply. I think sometimes it's adults and old generations that are the harder ones to change because they're so ingrained in their sense and what they believe. But just do it because you're a nice person. Like, it shouldn't hurt you.
That's my big thing with it.
To
Or
make you
like,
feel comfortable.
When particularly the older generation get all funny about like, oh, why are they going by different pronouns? I'm like, does it make a difference to you? No. So what's the problem? Like, it's, guess what? It's a word that you can use. You're able to use it. You're able to say it. And if it makes the whole conversation, the whole situation comfortable for both parties, just do it. Like,
and if you're old enough, don't tell me if you're 80, the vocabulary can't speak. Vocabulary hasn't changed multiple times in your generations. Like, every 10 years, something changes. You either adapt or you don't adapt. And I suppose they say we adapt so much that doing something like pronouns or disability terminology, even in our own community, it changes regularly.
Oh, mate, I've lost track.
And we find a new
lost track about where we're at with.
We find a new way to describe ourselves. Like, we go, oh, this is what it would be called. And someone will say something really iconic and you're like, actually, I prefer that. And that's just okay to be like, hey, Charlie, actually, next time we're on a podcast together, maybe I've completely changed who I am. My hair's blonde, who knows what. And I've gone to, this is how I am now. And maybe I'm a robot. And I mean, is it going to hurt you that I'm a robot? It's not going to hurt you that I'm a robot. So just embrace it and like, let's have great times and make great podcasts and go out and like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's all about not being offended by each other and actually
you've hit the
do
nail
I
on the
care
head.
that you're happy.
Yep, you've hit the nail on the head. I think it's all about just learning from each other and get, as you said, giving people enough space to breathe. Like, we get shit wrong. I get shit wrong. The amount of times I've said shit on this podcast and I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? But as long as I'm learning and I'm overcoming and I'm able to then look back at that and go, oh, that was a bit of a dumb thing to say. And
Yeah, that's the beauty of
yeah,
guests, though. They teach us so much.
exactly. And that's why I love doing this. I love doing this because I'm like, actually, it's given me so many different perspectives of like, actually, I didn't think about it that way, and that's actually changed how I think about it because now I'm seeing it from a different lens. But yeah, I think that there's a lot going on with the pronouns things, and I think people are getting too, what's the word, too caught up in it in terms of like seeing it as a massive issue that like it's wrong or it's right or it's this or it's that, whereas actually it's just, as you say, it's us evolving and changing and the vocabulary changing and people all learning more about themselves and us also being more like, the amount of information we have now is very, very much larger than what it was 80 years ago.
Oh, yes.
So people getting too, people want it.
I could never know what my friend had for breakfast in the way I can know what they have for breakfast now. Like, I know too much about people at this point. Like, I'm like, I love you, but that's too much information. Where's the allure here? Like, where's the secrecy?
Yeah.
How am I going to keep being interested in this person if I know everything?
All
about
it takes
them?
is a Google.
And I say that as I'm talking on a podcast, but like, do you know what I mean? You know what
No,
I
I know
mean.
exactly what you mean. Like, that's the thing. It's like you can find out pretty much anything at any time, but it's just people's realizations that the world changes, and you just got to roll with the punches and learn as you go.
It. You'll be way cooler if you do, honestly.
Yeah, and you'll be way cooler people because people will want to be around you because they know that you don't like. You're willing to learn. I think that is probably the biggest thing I would say to people is just be willing to learn. Willing to learn and willing to change.
Yeah. And they won't judge you either. If you don't judge them, then it will judge you. And who doesn't want to be in an open, safe, non-judgmental space in life? I know.
Completely agree. And that's a great place to end the podcast. Just before we end, I always give my guests a chance to plug themselves, what they're working on, what they want people to follow. Time to plug, crack on, tell people where to find you.
Well, as I said before, I'm Roxy Murray. I go as the multiple sclerosis fashionista on Instagram. I know that's a lot.
I'll link it below.
I'm sorry. And thank you. And I also have the Sick and Sickening Podcast, which is a disability podcast where I talk a lot about sex. So if you want to hear about sex and disability, come and see me there. And other than that, just have a great life. And hopefully we cross paths in this universe.
Definitely. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been an awesome episode. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of the Not Quite Podcast. Please make sure you follow us on TikTok and Instagram to get regular updates about the podcast.